My girlfriend got pregnant by my brother and my parents stood up for him and kicked me out of the house. My life had always seemed straightforward, or so I was led to believe. I was young, deeply in love, and, above all, I had a plan. My girlfriend, Myrna, and I were building our future together. We were both in college, determined to finish our degrees and enter the real world as a team. My parents, Gerald and Lorraine, were supportive. They were the quintessential church-going couple, the type who never missed a Sunday service and constantly emphasized the importance of hard work and family values. They were firm in their principles, sure, but they were always there when needed, or so I had convinced myself. Myrna and I had been together for 2 years. We met during freshman year and clicked instantly. We shared big aspirations and ambitious dreams. I always imagined I'd land a stable job, eventually pay off my student loans, and maybe buy a house in the suburbs with a white picket fence. I could already picture it, us, a golden retriever, a family, the classic American dream. But nothing could have prepared me for the storm that was brewing. It was late when Myrna told me she was expecting. Her words hit me like a sucker punch, leaving me breathless. I wasn't ready for this. We weren't prepared. We were still figuring out our lives. I had my own goals, and she had hers. But there it was, an undeniable reality staring us in the face. The following weeks were a blur of confusion. We talked for hours, weighing our options. Myrna wanted to keep the baby. She was scared, but her heart was already made up. I couldn't blame her. I was terrified too, but I supported her choice. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that we were about to start a whole new chapter, and this time it wasn't just about me, it was about us as a unit. But everything changed drastically the day I found out my brother, Eldon, had also been involved with Myrna. I can still feel the gut-wrenching moment when she confessed. She was crying inconsolably, her face buried in her hands. She apologized profusely, but nothing could alleviate the pain. My brother, whom I had always considered my best friend, had betrayed me. Not only that, but he was the baby's father. I was speechless. My entire universe crumbled in that instant. How could they do this to me? How could she? I tried to make sense of it, but it seemed impossible. Myrna and I had been together for over 2 years. How had this happened? I called Eldon. I needed to hear it from him. When I confronted him, he acted indifferent. He never offered a genuine apology, simply stating that it happened and we needed to move on. Move on? My heart felt shattered. I couldn't process it. I didn't expect this from him. And then there were my parents. When they found out about the pregnancy, they were eerily calm. Too calm. I remember my mother's reaction as if it were yesterday. She simply stared at me with a blank expression and then mumbled something about God's plan. She claimed it was all part of a bigger picture, a test of faith, that everyone had a role to play and we needed to accept it. My father, who had always been the stricter one, just nodded in agreement. They didn't even mention the fact that Eldon was involved. They ignored it as if it were irrelevant. But when they started talking about family, that's when I lost it. They said I needed to support Eldon, that this was our chance to show love and forgiveness, and that I needed to release my anger. It was all part of God's plan, they said. My mother actually said that. And as much as I wanted to scream, as much as I wanted to tell them how they had failed me, nothing I could say would change their perspective. They were so blinded by their beliefs that they couldn't see the damage this was causing me. The following days were chaotic. My parents kept pressuring me, trying to convince me that it was for the greater good. They told me to be the bigger person, to rise above the situation. They pointed out that I was the older brother, I needed to set an example for the family. The hypocrisy was overwhelming. They said they had sacrificed so much for me, and now it was my turn to fix things. The more they insisted, the more I felt like I was suffocating. I saw it clearly now, everything I had worked for, everything I had mentally built for my future, was fading away. My dream of graduating, of living independently, of fulfilling myself as a person, it was all slipping through my fingers like sand. My life wasn't just being derailed, it was being taken over by my family's choices, by a betrayal I couldn't ignore, by a plan that wasn't mine. But then came the worst part. My parents turned on me. They didn't say it outright at first, but every conversation, every suggestion they made about how I should handle the situation, felt like an attack. They had made their decision. They would support Eldon and Myrna, and they expected me to fall in line. I told them I couldn't. It was impossible for me to support Eldon, not after what he had done. I couldn't help take care of the baby. I had my own future to think about, and that didn't include cleaning up my brother's messes. They didn't take it well. My father was furious. He said I was being selfish and abandoning my family when they needed me most. My mother's voice cracked as she begged me to reconsider. She said I couldn't turn my back on my brother, that this was a test of faith and I would regret it. But nothing they said made sense. They never held Eldon accountable for his actions, never demanded that he make amends. That's when the moment that changed everything happened. They kicked me out. It wasn't a dramatic showdown, just a cold, calculated decision. They told me I couldn't stay in the house anymore. They said they couldn't have me around if I was going to be so negative, so divisive. They told me to leave and warned me I would never be welcomed back unless I apologized to Eldon and accepted the plan. And that was it. They took my college fund, the money I had worked so hard to save and entrusted to them for safekeeping, and used it to turn my room into a nursery for the baby. I felt my whole world crumble. The room that was once filled with dreams and hopes was now being repurposed for a child that wasn't even mine. My future, my education, my freedom were being erased in favor of a situation I had no part in. My parents said it was God's will. They said it was all part of a bigger plan. But I couldn't see it. All I saw were the remnants of what I had worked for, of everything I had believed in. They didn't even offer an apology. They simply said it was necessary and they were right. From their perspective, this was their path now, and I was supposed to accept it. So I walked out the door. And for the next 3 years, I didn't look back. The first few weeks after I left were disorienting, like the ground had disappeared beneath me. One day I was in my childhood bedroom, finishing essays and dreaming of internships, and the next, I was sleeping on a pull-out couch in my friend Curtis's one-bedroom apartment above a pizza shop. The couch was lumpy, and the springs creaked with every turn, but it was a place to rest, and that was more than I had. I tried not to wallow. I got up every morning, made coffee, and looked for jobs. My pride kept me from telling most people what had happened. I told them I had decided to take time off school, that I needed a break from the pressure, but that was only half the truth. The real story was tangled and ugly, and most people wouldn't know what to say if they heard it. I enrolled in a few courses at the community college a few miles away, just enough to keep my academic momentum going. I worked part-time at a small hardware store, unloading shipments and helping customers find the right kind of screws or drill bits. The pay was low, but the manager, a quiet man named Lowell, didn't ask questions and gave me as many hours as I could handle. There were nights, though quiet nights, where I couldn't help but think about the past. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, and remember Myrna's voice cracking when she told me she was pregnant. I remembered Eldon's flat voice saying, "It happened. We need to move on." And most of all, I remembered the way my mother looked at me when they told me to leave, no anger, no sadness. Just conviction. That memory stuck with me more than anything else. Not the betrayal. Not the financial loss. But that look. That certainty in their eyes that they were doing the right thing by turning their backs on me. In those early days, I reached out a few times. I called the house, texted my mom. The responses, when they came at all, were brief and formal. "We hope you're well. We are praying for your healing. Let us know when you're ready to come home with the right heart." With the right heart. It wasn't just that they had chosen Eldon over me. It was that they had rewritten the story to make me the villain. In their version, I was the one who had walked away, who refused to forgive, who had let bitterness grow. The way they saw it, they were blameless and guided by faith, making hard decisions out of love. They had convinced themselves that I needed to repent, not them. Eventually, I stopped trying. I rebuilt, piece by piece. It was slow. Painfully slow. I had to forfeit my spot at the university, since I no longer had the funds to continue. The scholarship I'd been counting on required full-time enrollment and had expired when I left. I petitioned, begged even, but the bureaucracy was cold. I wasn't an exception. I was just another name on a list. I moved out of Curtis's apartment after 8 months. I found a room to rent in a shared house with 3 other guys, all of whom worked odd jobs and mostly kept to themselves. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I even got a desk, a small lamp, and a cheap bookshelf where I kept the few things I had managed to take with me, mostly textbooks and old journals. Time passed. Holidays were the worst. Thanksgiving came, and while the rest of the world gathered around tables, I worked a double shift. I told myself I didn't care, but when I got home that night and saw the pictures online, smiling faces, turkeys, candles, laughter, I felt the ache again. Not for the food or the festivities, but for the lie I used to believe, that I belonged somewhere. Christmas was quieter. No phone call. No message. Nothing. Not even a card. And yet, every once in a while, I heard things. A mutual acquaintance would mention that Eldon and Myrna had moved in with my parents permanently. That my old bedroom had been completely renovated, turned into a cheerful nursery with stars on the ceiling and yellow curtains. That the baby, named Vincent, was already walking and starting to talk. I heard that my parents hosted a blessing ceremony for the family. That they stood up in church and shared a testimony about faith, resilience, and the joy of grandchildren. I wasn't mentioned, of course. I had been quietly edited out. I learned to live with the silence. I didn't let it harden me completely. I kept going. Finished my associate's degree. Found full-time work as a clerk in the city library. It was steady, peaceful. I liked the order of it, the way books always returned to their rightful place, the way people whispered out of respect. I told myself I was content. But everything changed with a single phone call. It came out of nowhere, on a Thursday morning. I had just gotten off my shift and was walking to grab lunch when my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but something in me hesitated before swiping it away. I answered. "Hello?" I said. There was a pause on the line, then a shaky breath. "Calvin," a voice said. I froze. It was my mother. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, more brittle. It had been over 1,000 days since we last spoke, but I recognized the rhythm instantly. She said my name again, softer this time, as if afraid it might vanish between syllables. I didn't speak. I just listened. She told me everything had gone wrong. The house had been foreclosed. My father had lost most of their savings in a business deal gone bad, something about a real estate flip that never flipped. There were legal issues. Debts. They were living in a small rental now, barely scraping by. Eldon had been out of work for a few months, and Myrna's part-time gig at the daycare wasn't enough. The baby was sick often, and medical bills had piled up. She said they needed help. She didn't say money, not directly. But it hung there, obvious and unspoken. I kept my voice steady. "Why are you calling me?" There was a long pause. "Because we have no one else," she said, the words small and trembling. "Because, you're still our son." I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I let the silence do the talking. She continued. Said she was sorry. Said she wished things had happened differently. That they had made mistakes. But even now, even as she confessed these things, it wasn't clear if she understood what those mistakes were. I waited until she finished. Then, quietly, I reminded her of what they had done. I told her I had pulled myself out of the hole they left me in. I told her I had built something from nothing, while they were turning my bedroom into a nursery and using my savings to buy diapers for a child that wasn't mine. And now, 3 years later, they wanted to pretend like none of it had happened? She cried then. Quietly. Muffled sobs over the line. But I didn't flinch. I told her that forgiveness was not a door that could be opened just because someone knocked hard enough. Sometimes, when you lock someone out for long enough, they stop waiting on the porch. Before she could say anything else, I ended the call. A few days after that call with my mother, things went quiet again. I returned to work, sorted books, sipped tea during lunch breaks, and told myself I was at peace. But the truth was, the silence had a different weight to it now. Heavier. More expectant. It was as if my family had passed the baton to one another behind the scenes, waiting for someone else to try next. And I was right. It was a Saturday when the next call came. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years, Eldon. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the decline button. Every instinct told me to ignore it, to let it ring into oblivion and preserve the thin layer of stability I'd rebuilt. But curiosity, as it had before, got the better of me. I answered. He greeted me like nothing had happened. "Hey, Cal, thought it might be time we talked." Just like that. His voice sounded the same calm, casual, as if we were catching up over coffee instead of revisiting the collapse of my entire life. I felt my stomach tighten, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. "What do you want?" I asked, flat and cold. Eldon sighed. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. And I get that. But I need to say something. I should have said it years ago." I didn't respond. I let him fill the silence. He spoke slowly, each word picked carefully like he was afraid one wrong syllable would end the call. He admitted that what he did was wrong. That he had crossed a line he never should have even approached. He said that everything spiraled so quickly after that, and by the time he realized how deep the damage was, it felt impossible to undo it. "I didn't mean for things to turn out this way," he said. And that was the moment I nearly hung up. I bit my lip, holding back a bitter response. It wasn't about what he meant. It was about what he did. There had been no accident. No one tripped and fell into betrayal. He had made decisions, several of them. And those decisions led us here. I regret what I did, he continued. Not just because of how it turned out, but because of what it cost. You were my brother, Cal. I ruined that. He paused, and I could hear the catch in his voice. For a moment, just a moment, I almost believed him. But the years of silence after he got what he wanted, the family's favor, a home, and a child, those years still spoke louder than any apology. I couldn't forget how he stayed quiet when I was kicked out. How he let our parents use my savings without a word. How he let Myrna step into my place and never once looked back. Is that it? I asked. Eldon hesitated. I don't want anything from you, he said. I don't know. Maybe I just needed to say it. Maybe I needed you to know that I carry it. I haven't had a decent night's sleep in months. I think about it all the time. I didn't know what to say to that. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't reopen wounds I'd spent years stitching shut. So I told him the truth. That's your burden now, I said. Not mine. He tried again. I'm not asking for your help. I'm not asking you to come home. I just want to try and make things right. I couldn't help but laugh, a short, humorless sound. You think you can make things right? Eldon, there's no fixing this. You and I both know that. What's broken can't be rebuilt with apologies. He didn't argue. Maybe part of him already knew it. I'll let you go, he said finally. Just, thank you for picking up. I didn't think you would. And then the line went dead. I didn't feel better. I didn't feel worse. I felt numb. Like hearing his voice had stirred something that had already fossilized years ago. But what struck me the most was the fact that he hadn't called sooner. Not when I lost my education. Not when I lost my family. Not when I lost my home. He waited until he had something to unload and then handed it to me. It wasn't remorse. It was relief. For him. 3 days passed. Then, another call. Myrna. This time, I didn't hesitate. I answered on the first ring. Her voice was soft. Gentle. Almost fragile. Cal. I hope this isn't a bad time. I didn't answer. I just waited. I know you don't want to hear from me, she said, but I didn't know what else to do. Your mom told me about the call you two had. She said it didn't go well. That's one way to put it, I said. She inhaled slowly. I'm not calling to argue. Or to defend myself. I know what I did. I've known for a long time. Her words tumbled over each other, not in a rehearsed way, but in a nervous one. She said she still thought about what happened every day. That she regretted not only her actions, but her silence. When your parents kicked you out, she said, I should have said something. I should have told them it wasn't fair. But you didn't, I said. You moved in. You took my room. You let them use the money I saved. I know, she whispered. I was scared. I was trying to do what was best for the baby, but I was wrong. I was wrong in every way. Silence settled again. Then she brought up the child, Vincent. He's 4 now, she said. He's smart. He's kind. And he asks about you. He's never met you, but he sees pictures. Your parents still have that old photo of you from high school on the hallway shelf. He points to it and asks who that is. I didn't know what to say. He deserves to know you, she continued. He deserves to know the truth one day, and I want to be able to tell him that I tried. That we tried. That we didn't just let things stay broken. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry, she said. I know those words probably mean nothing to you now. But I wanted to say them anyway. I owe you that. Her voice cracked. And this time, I felt something. Not forgiveness. Not pity. But clarity. I told her what I told Eldon. That some things, once broken, stay that way. That healing doesn't always mean returning to what was. Sometimes it just means walking away with your dignity and keeping your distance. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But that doesn't mean I'm coming back. She thanked me for listening. She didn't ask for help. She didn't mention money. She just hung up. And I sat there, staring at my phone, realizing for the first time in a long while that I didn't feel like I owed them anything. I had survived what they put me through. And that was enough. 15 days after Myrna's call, just when I thought the wave of contact had finally ebbed, the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID simply read Gracehill Community Church. I stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering. That name hadn't crossed my mind in years. Growing up, the church had been a second home, whether I wanted it to be or not. Sundays were never optional. Neither were the prayer groups, the potlucks, the youth retreats. My parents didn't just attend, faith was their identity. The church had always backed them, and for the most part, I assumed they still did. Still. I answered. A warm but unfamiliar voice came through. Hello, is this Calvin Beck? Yes, I said, cautiously. This is Pastor Lewis, from Gracehill. I know this is unexpected, but I was hoping you'd give me a few minutes of your time. I said nothing, waiting. I wanted to speak with you regarding your family, your parents, in particular, he continued, his tone measured, not preachy. They've been in touch with the church recently. They've shared some of what's been going on. I kept silent. I realize you may not want to speak about it, he said quickly, but I'd like to hear your side. I'm not here to persuade or push. Just to listen. Something in his voice caught me off guard. It wasn't self-righteous, wasn't loaded with pity or pressure. It sounded like someone who genuinely wanted to understand, not correct. Against my better judgment, I said, all right. And so I told him everything. I recounted it all, the betrayal, the exile, the loss of my savings, the isolation, the silence. I spoke evenly, like I was reading a report, not living a memory. I told him about Eldon and Myrna, about the nursery replacing my dreams, about the way my parents framed it as divine order rather than moral failure. Pastor Lewis listened the entire time without interruption. Occasionally he murmured, I understand, or I'm so sorry you went through that, but he never interjected with scripture or sermons. Just presence. When I finished, there was a long pause. I could hear him exhale softly. Thank you, he said. I had only heard fragments. But your story adds weight to things your parents never spoke of. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but too often, people use faith to explain away pain instead of confronting it. That caught me off guard. I was prepared to encourage reconciliation, he went on, but now I see that what you need more than anything is acknowledgement. So let me be clear, you were wronged. Deeply. And you've carried that burden alone for too long. His words weren't healing, exactly, but they settled in my chest like a stone that had finally found a place to rest. Your parents are hurting now, he continued, but that doesn't erase what they did. And it doesn't obligate you to fix it. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, is yours to give on your terms. Not theirs. Not mine. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. He added, gently, you have no debt here, Calvin. Not to them. Not to the church. I just hope, whatever peace looks like for you, you find it. And that if one day you ever do want to talk again, this number will be here. And that was it. He didn't ask me to pray. He didn't try to save me. He didn't quote verses or tell me to go home. He simply respected my truth and let it stand. I hung up the phone and sat in the quiet for a long time. No noise. No distractions. Just me and the weight of the last few years. I thought about the child, Vincent. I thought about Myrna's voice cracking when she talked about him, about how he pointed at my photo on the shelf. I thought about Eldon, stumbling through an apology too late to matter. I thought about my mother crying on the phone, her voice thin with regret. But none of it changed the facts. They had made their choices. They had crafted a future that didn't include me. They had turned to each other and shut me out. And now, when the house was collapsing, they remembered my name. It was hard not to feel a trace of guilt, but I reminded myself, guilt is not the same as responsibility. I could acknowledge their suffering without making it mine to carry. People like to believe family ties are unbreakable. That no matter how deep the cut, the bond of blood will always pull you back. But the truth is, love is a choice. Trust is a choice. Loyalty is earned, not given. And once those things are shattered, they don't always return. I didn't go back. I didn't send money. I didn't return the church's follow-up messages. Instead, I kept building the life they said I didn't need. Quietly. Steadily. On my terms. I moved to a new city. Finished my degree. Found work I cared about. Met people who valued me for who I was, not who they expected me to be. I found my peace not in reunion, but in boundaries. Sometimes, healing isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's a quiet evening in a small apartment. A warm cup of tea. A book you chose for yourself. The knowledge that you are safe, not because others made you so, but because you did. And that's enough. Thank you all for watching the video, and see you soon.